With that situation, I would ask why it is that you would lean into that quote unquote like wild feeling. Like, what do you get out of being wild or drinking or, leaning into that experience in every situation? And that will help you get to the root of like why you feel like you have to show up in that specific way. Is it benefiting you? Or is it taking away from you to where you feel like you have to start over a new place? And that way you can consistently be chaotic, but like, what is that chaotic energy? Like, what's the root of that? And I think by understanding the root of that chaotic energy, you stop having to go to travel to escape from whatever things that you bridges that you burned in the past place, and really address it. So actually, like, talking about drinking and traveling and making connections, I actually made an intentional decision 2 years ago to stop drinking. And this was because I too I wanted to test. I've been using myself as a guinea pig throughout these 4 years of traveling, because I wanted to see, like, what are the methods for making meaningful connections. And I love alcohol and like the taste of it in general, but I found myself actually leaning into alcohol a lot, especially when I was feeling rather insecure or just like not feeling comfortable with my body or with my social anxiety or any of those things. And so I was like, okay, well, what does it feel like to just go the opposite direction? Instead of taking 10 shots of whiskey, what if I just stayed sober? How did that feel? Would I still make friends? Would I make deeper friends? So I started to ask myself these questions of like why it is that I would drink. And yeah, so now it's been close to 2 years, and I feel like my connections are deeper, especially with myself. I no longer have those blocks, and I feel a lot more confident in all the situations that I used to lean on alcohol for. I think we all lean on a lot of things to make ourselves feel more comfortable in some of these more high stress moments. But yeah, again, it's asking yourself the question of like, what does it look like if you took that away, and what is it that you're using that to numb from?
Absolutely, and that's very interesting. And I want to just talk to you a bit more about sobriety and about your journey. How did that happen? Like it's a big contrasting world, and also when you're traveling, you meet a lot of people who they have a culture of drinking, and it's so socially
Mm-hmm.
acceptable that it becomes a cool habit. It becomes like you're cool if you're drunk, and then that's the thing that it is.
Mm-hmm.
So how did you manage to shift that mindset? That's like, I'm just gonna stay sober.
Let me tell you a fun fact about the podcast. We're at the beginning process and you can have a tremendous influence over our channel. By just liking and subscribing to our channel, you'll help us increase the quality of the videos that we're creating. Also, you'll stay in the loop with the new videos which are coming every week. Thank you and enjoy the episode.
Yeah, so I actually started. So I was like a couple years ago in Brazil, and I had the best time in Rio. I had so many caipirinhas, and was drunk for the whole time I was there. And then I got to Medellin in Colombia, and I was trying to do the nightlife thing there as well, and I felt a different energy, and I felt like, I don't know, there was a confidence thing that I was lacking when I got to Colombia, where I just didn't feel. The other thing too is Brazil is so body positive, like very body, but everyone just like owns, like they're just being themselves in whatever shape or form, right? And so to go from Brazil where everything was just so like free and like vibrant, and then there's just an energy shift I couldn't identify in Medellin, but I felt myself like maybe the comparison between the two countries, and I was like, oh, I don't feel so great. And I had a choice. I remember this rooftop that I went with my friend. I was like, I have a choice. I could feel better by drinking in this moment, or I could lean into like, why is it that I don't feel so great right now, and like really dig into that moment. And so I made a choice to just be sober for the few weeks I was in Medellin. And I ended up going to like a silence yoga ashram for a few days and really leaning into it, where we did like at the end, when you're in silence, where you can't talk to anyone, you can't play music, any of that. um you really have to be kind to yourself, because that's the only way that you're going to survive that period of time. And I found myself, I remember I was late for the first event that we had to do during this retreat, and I was late and I missed it, and they closed the doors on me. And I was so angry with myself. I'm like, oh my God, it's the first thing, and I paid for it. And it's like, now I'm gonna sit by myself in this cabin while everyone else is doing whatever activity it was. And I remember being angry with myself for like an hour. And then I was like, whoa, do I really want to sit in this for 3 days? Or do I want to be kind to myself and accept the fact that, yeah, I was late by 3 minutes? And is that going to ruin the next few days for me? Or do I be kind and keep moving forward? And so that's what I chose. And then at the very end of this experience, I remember I was a lot more thoughtful. I was a lot more mindful in the actions that I had, like by even like eating, you had to really sit and look at the textures and the colors of what you were eating and really appreciate every moment. And I remember there was an ecstatic dance portion. I'd never done ecstatic dance at this point, which dancing is one of those big social anxiety moments. And I remember that was me at that club a few weeks prior, not feeling so confident to dance. Of course, you're in Medellin, everyone's like dancing. You're like, I just need a little bit something. That was one of the triggers. So then I'm here in Colombia in Silent Street, and we're not talking, but we're just all like dancing and dancing in like really weird ways, right? Like acting like animals, and like, oh, act like a giraffe, act like a lion. It's just it was like yeah. Yeah, things like you would want some type of liquid courage to do, but we did it all sober and everyone was in the same position, also feeling a bit awkward, but at the end it just came together so beautifully, where you could just feel there's just like the freedom in our bodies, like being in your body, like that true like embodiment of like I am in my body, I'm moving my body, and like those thoughts of like what will other people think, all of those things, like they weren't present there, and I got to taste what that would feel like to be able to move my body just to the beat of the music because I felt like doing it and not having those like thoughts of like, oh, everyone else is staring at you kind of thing. So that was really a breaking point for me. And I think once I learned how to be comfortable in my body, that was such an it unlocked so many things for me. So then I figured, I was like, okay, well, if I no longer need alcohol to dance, and I was already at a point where I like didn't necessarily need alcohol to make conversation, then I was like, oh, well, then what do I need alcohol for? So then I kept going, and yeah, now we're a couple years in multiple countries, meeting a lot of people. I've gone to weddings sober, concerts sober, raves sober, like, and I realized it's all about the energy that you bring. And my energy, like, I've gotten it to the point where people think I'm drunk because I'm like in it, I'm dancing, and I'm the one like getting everyone up on the dance floor, whereas everyone takes like 2 hours for the alcohol to hit them. Where I'm like, no, I'm here. We're dancing for the first 2 hours. I'm the only one dancing on the dance floor for the first 2 hours until everyone finally feels a little bit more comfortable. So I think it's such a mindset shift, but it's like one thing at a time, and it's not like immediately it's gonna be great. Like going to a wedding sober was a little terrifying, but you start to do it one at a time, and next thing you know, you're just comfortable in all the situations.
Absolutely, that's a fantastic story, and I can tell you from experience because I've also been sober for about 1.5 years now. It's been a
Oh, nice.
while.
Congrats.
Thank you. And I was thinking about my journey as well. It's like you mentioned something about the environment. You have to be in the right environment that kind of pushes you towards that. And I think that's a
Yeah.
great thing. So in my case, all my friends were drinking at the time, and then I met a guy who's really cool. He's a skydiver, a fighter, and then he's traveling around the world, and it's really cool. And he's sober for 10 years, right? So we get along really
Mm.
well because we have a lot of things in common. But I always consider, in my perception at the time, that if you're sober, you're like one of those has-been people, like a retiree, and then you talk about the glory days as they are behind you. It's like, oh, back in the day it used to be fun. Now I'm just like a
Mhm.
well-wise person, and I'm not
Yeah.
having fun, but I don't have to fun anymore. And I met this guy. It's like, oh, you can actually be a cool person without drinking. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And then I kind of like this idea kind of got embedded into my mind. It's like, oh, it's not, you don't necessarily have to drink to be cool. Because there's other way
Yeah.
around. And that kind of shifted my mindset completely. And then I decided to start my own business shortly after. And I knew that I will be the most productive version of myself if I'm sober completely.
Yeah. Also that, yeah.
And then I decided if I need to give it 100%, 100% it, I'm going to be sober. So I decided I'm going to have my first beer after I get my first clients. And there's the irony
Yeah.
of the universe. What happens is that the first client that I signed was the guy who's running rehabilitation programs in Thailand. And one of the reasons for which he wanted to work with me is because I told him I'm also sober. And I was like,
Wow.
maybe the universe is trying to tell me something. And I was supposed to have in the first beer, then I'll just keep going. And then is initially just I'm going to be sober for a couple of weeks until I kind of get myself running, and then I start loving this sensation. And as mentioned as well, you kind of get that you don't depend of some external impulse to feel good about yourself. You're
Mhm.
just there, you have that energy, and then you kind of pull people with you as well. And something very
Yeah.
interesting that I noticed is that instead of having a group of friends that would pull me back into my habits, exactly the opposite happens. And some of my friends stopped drinking as well. And most of the people don't drink anymore when they're around me. And I was like, oh,
Mhm.
that's really interesting. It's really, really good to have this kind of people around.
Yeah, and you give other people the freedom to also not feel like they have to drink in order to have fun because they see you doing it and they're like, "Oh, okay, I could also just drink a mocktail." I've converted a lot of people into mocktails as well over the course of the last couple of years because they're like, "Oh yeah, actually, I don't want to feel like crap tomorrow morning and if we don't need to drink, then yeah, let's do something else. Let's do an activity when we hang out or like run an errand together and like connections can happen in so many different ways besides just going out and drinking."